This is an interview with John Alexander at Miles College at 3 p.m. on Friday, April 26th. John, how are you today?
Fine, and how about you?
I'm doing good, doing good. You want to talk a little bit about you, where you grew up, and your involvement with the civil rights movement, and some of the things that you've done from childhood up to right now, and also some of your memories. You were telling me that you grew up in Michigan initially? You were born in Michigan?
I was born in Michigan and reared here in Birmingham, Alabama.
What part of Michigan were you born?
River Rouge, Michigan.
Okay.
Right outside of Detroit.
Oh, okay. And you lived there with your mom and dad until you were about 4?
Till I was about 4 years old.
And
right.
What brought you back to Birmingham?
Okay, my father died when I was 4 going on 5, and my mother became ill. She had this drinking problem, and she became very ill, and my mother adopted us and brought us to Birmingham.
Your grandmother, you mean?
My grandmother, right.
Okay, so your grandmom lived here in Birmingham.
Yes.
And what section of the city did you grow up when you came back to Birmingham?
Okay, southwest section over in Loveman's Village Housing Project.
Okay. When you, do you remember anything about Michigan at all at the age of 4, or did you not remember much about that?
Okay, not very much, but I can remember moving from place to place.
Okay. So remembering moving from place to place, then coming to Birmingham to live with your grandmom, and you were one of how many kids?
One of 5 kids.
So 5 of you came to live with grandmother and in the Loveman's Village area. What was Loveman's Village like to you then?
Okay, it was a little small place. It was kind of crowded, but it was real peaceful and friendly-like.
Was it pretty? Did you consider it pretty with trees and grass? Or?
Okay, it had a lot of grass and a lot of trees. You know, people tended to care for their lawns and plant flowers and things to beautify the community.
So it was like a kind of a nice place to be, huh?
Yes.
And you mentioned that your dad died. He had worked in a steel plant, did he?
Yes.
Okay. So living here, where did you go to school?
Okay, I went to Washington School for 3 years. I transferred to Center Street School. I finished Center Street School.
Okay.
Then I went to Immaculata High School, and then I went from Immaculata to Ullman High School.
So you kind of got a taste of all the different school systems at a very early age, huh?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Washington School, where you went initially.
Okay, Washington School, it was kind of older school, and it was a one-story building then, but now, you know, they has expanded it now. One-story building, and
do you remember who the principal was?
The principal was Mr. Matheson.
Okay. You remember anything about him or how school seemed to be at that time as opposed to now? What kinds of things teachers did and principals did and how kids reacted or behaved in school?
Okay, he was a principal. He was a strict disciplinary. Mm-hmm. And the teachers, you know, they were also strict disciplinaries. I can even remember one, Miss Bean and Miss Mitchell Smith.
Uh-huh.
You know, nobody wanted to face those two.
What kind of teachers were they when you said that nobody wanted to face them?
Well, in a sense, kids nowadays would call them mean, you know, but they really meant that you were going to get your lesson and it wasn't going to be in the cutting and acting out. Because if it was, then they could straighten you out.
And if they couldn't, then Mr. Matheson would?
Right.
Okay. So let's travel from from Washington, and then you went to Center Street. Do you remember who the principal was at that time and how that was?
The principal at Center Street was Mr. Sheehy, R.C. Sheehy.
Okay. That brings a smile to your face. How was Mr. Sheehy? And tell us a little bit about some of the teachers that you had there.
Okay, Mr. Sheehy, he was another strict discipline. Uh-huh. And he was, I believe, a little more stricter than Mr. Matheson, you know, because he used to come down the hall and demand all respect and everybody come to a standstill.
Oh, when he would walk, he was like the general, huh?
Right, he would walk the hall and he would come up to you and ask you, why, son, why, and then bust you in the chest, you know, if he caught you doing something wrong. Uh-huh. Okay, and the teachers, I remember a couple teachers, Miss E.E. Wills, and she was a dark-skinned teacher, so we used to make fun of them, call her Black Emma, and she was our English teacher, and she was really, she was a demanding teacher, and she was a disciplinarian, and she had a little strap in her room, that she used when kids got out of order, wouldn't do their work assignments.
And what you had, was another teacher that you remembered, or just Mrs. Wills?
Okay, I remember Miss Cantaloupe, and she was the music teacher then, and her husband, I think he's one of the superintendents at the Board of Education.
How was Mrs. Cantaloupe as a music teacher? What do you think of her?
Okay, well, she was real sweet, and she was nice looking, and so that even made class even that much more, more.
She was a pretty lady.
Yeah, she was a pretty lady, right.
Your expression shows what you thought of all the teachers, including the principals that were men. And you're saying something that we talk about when you look at the movement, and when you look at teachers then, and the kind of respect. And that's what it seems like you're talking about, the respect.
Right. Mm-hmm. And all of them, they wanted respect, and they respected you, and you respected them. They didn't do anything that was out of order that would make you disrespect them. They always did things that would make you respect them, wherever you ran into them at, or wherever the situation came needed and deemed them.
So then you finished elementary, and then you went to high school,
right.
And you were at Ullman. What about the principal, and who were the teachers that you remember?
I went to Immaculata first.
I'm sorry, Immaculata. Let's talk.
Right.
That's a parochial school, Catholic school.
Okay, Catholic school, right. Now, when I was at Immaculata, those were some very fine years, and I believe I learned a lot in those years, and that was my basic foundation.
Okay.
Even though I wasn't Catholic, I'm a Baptist, but just being there, it was a small school, and then like teachers had more time, to put in with you because they didn't have that many students.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed Immaculata.
Okay. Then you left there and you went to Ullman?
Right.
How was Ullman High School? Ullman is no longer, that's over where the University of Alabama at Birmingham, part of the buildings over there are still there from that school.
Okay. Ullman, it was a pretty decent school, and see what happened when I left Immaculata, when I went to Ullman, Mother C.I. had transferred from Center Street to Ullman, and so then I had to run back into that wide song why if I got in trouble. Okay, and when I got there, I had some nice teachers there also. I remember Miss Jackson. She was my history teacher and also my homeroom teacher, and she distilled in me a lot of values and things, just about, living and, respecting people and earning my respect.
So that set a foundation for you,
right?
Or all of those experiences,
right?
When did you learn about the movement? Okay,
I learned about the movement just listening and watching the TV and the radio and reading the newspaper.
So as a youngster, as a teenager, that's when you kind of learned about it?
That's when I learned about it, right.
What do you remember seeing and what do you remember reading?
Okay, I remember seeing the people doing the sit-ins at the lunch counters.
You remember seeing that on television, or do you remember seeing it in reality? Were you downtown?
Okay, going downtown, just walking through town, I used to skip school, me and some of my partners, and that's really how I got involved in civil rights, skipping school and going downtown. So
your teachers didn't know that if you skipped school? Mr. Shihai certainly did not know, right? So what made you decide to skip school? Because you didn't do anything bad, when you skipped school. You shouldn't have skipped school, but it was something that you wanted to see, to learn about, or what made you guys decide to do that? Okay, well, we wanted to see really what was going on. We were just, fascinated, that these people were trying to do these things. They were trying to go places where we never were allowed to go to. So where black people were going to places where only white people went? Right. And what did you think about that? It just fascinated me. So I wanted to go, and see these people, And then, like I said, I started seeing it on the news and things, about them sitting in, and then policemen coming in and taking them out and things, and just different people coming from different areas of the nation and things. So I wanted to get involved. I just got interested. I wanted to be one of those people. What did your grandmother think about you when I'm sure eventually she found out that you skipped school and you told her where you went? And also, was your church involved, or were you all involved in church at that time?
Okay, my grandma, she was a minister at a spiritual church at Mount Moriah, and it was on the south side. She was an older lady, but she could get around real well for her age, and people didn't believe her age.
What age woman was she?
Well, when she passed away, she was 86.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So what did she think about you?
Well, she just told me to be careful, you know, and she would pray for me, you know, and she said, well, you know, she wasn't gonna knock what I was doing, but just be careful, and she would pray for me.
And your church, was the church involved in the movement at all? Did they ever have meetings at the church, to your knowledge? Okay,
now I went to Zion Star Baptist Church, and it was on the south side. Okay, I have no knowledge of my church having any meetings, and my pastor was Reverend Pfeiffer then.
What about the community where you lived during the time of part of the movement? Do you remember if any people had meetings at their houses or left the lights on for because they were afraid of bombings or anything like that?
Right. When I was staying out in Lubman Village, we got quite a few bomb threats during that time. And we would get these calls from these white people, and they would say these things on the phone, then hang the phone up.
What kinds of things would they say?
Well, it's a bomb in your house, or niggas, you better watch out, and something like this. And so nobody white would have been there during that day but the insurance man. And so my grandmother used to make us get up and go look in the closet, up under the sofa, or wherever he had been in our house. And back then, white people used to come in your house, and they'd try to walk all over your house, you know. But then we used to try to keep them in the living room so that would be the only area that we would have to search, you know. And we used to often, you know, back then they had party lines also, you know, where 2 or 3 people would be on one line, you know, and you could hear the other person's conversation and things.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but let's go back to when you said white people could come into your house and go anywhere they wanted to. You mean like the insurance man, and what other kinds of white people you talking about?
Well, the insurance man, he took the liberty of, when she let him in the front door, that he could come in and he could walk to the kitchen and look around in the kitchen and then come back and sit on the sofa.
And nobody could say anything about it?
Well, my grandma, well, she was old, and then she was old-fashioned, you know, so they said, well, you know, leave the white man alone and he'll leave you alone. You know, so we were young, you know, but we felt that, you know, being strange that he could come in there and him not knowing us that well, you know, and walk through our house and then come back and sit down on the sofa.
Any other people did that to your house that you remember?
No, he's probably the only somebody that came there, the white insurance man. Our milkman, he was a black guy.
Okay. Who was your milkman?
Mr. Mitchell Smiley.
And that's what people probably don't remember. A lot of younger people, that you're saying that milk was delivered to your door?
Right. It was set on the porch, right.
How did you enjoy that?
It was nice. And see, I used to work on the milk truck and make extra money.
Oh, okay.
Deliver milk with him.
So we talked about him coming in, and then the other point that we wanted to bring up when you talked about the movement and being involved, and the people in your community, you said they did the party line. You talked about that. You could hear when you picked up your phone to make a phone call, somebody could already be on it? Right.
You can hear the other party talking on the phone.
So how did you go about, if you wanted, you just had to wait until they finished?
Okay, you wait until they finish, right? Or either they'll wait until you finish, but sometimes they would be rude. They would say, well, can you clear the line, please? You know, they'll ask you off the line, right? Okay.
So that may not have been so good, or was it?
No, because they could be on the other end listening to your conversation, or either you could be on the other end listening to their conversation, right?
So you said you were always fascinated by the movement, and you would go and you would see on television. So what prompted you to say, as you became a little older, that I want to get involved? What?
Because I saw other youth getting involved, and it was something positive. It wasn't something negative. You know, the negative thing, you know, I had some partners, we used to do a lot of negative things, so I was trying to shy away from that. And I wanted to do something positive. You know, I wanted the people to know me for being somebody and not being a nobody.
What did you think about segregation at that time? Because that was the only thing that you knew. But when you look back at segregation, you talked about the schools that you had attended and the kinds of teachers that you had. And when you look at the schools today that are integrated, what do you think? Do you think it's better or worse, the same, or do you have any feelings about that?
Okay, I really think, now, I was for integration, but as I grew older and look at things now, I believe we really made a mistake. To me, it looked like we made a mistake. Because back then, we owned something. We could say, well, this is ours. Mm-hmm. But now, we don't own anything. It's theirs. Mm-hmm. We are there. Mm-hmm. And we're just there. Okay.
You, not too long ago, you had a situation in your community with you, and I know that right now you've worked with children for a number of years. But let's go back to the time that an article was written in the paper about you and being a nonviolent person and growing up during the civil rights era, that you had a conference, somebody confronted you. Would you tell us about what happened?
Okay, I was getting off work one morning, and I had worked a double shift, and I was really tired, so it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was finna pull up in my driveway. It was misty rain, and it was fog over in the area where I was living at. And my mind, when I saw these 3 guys, they were walking by my house, my mind told me, said, well, the guys may have been trying to get in my house. Mm-hmm. It was 3 days before Christmas. Mm. So I didn't follow my mind. My first mind told me to ride on down and circle back. Okay. And if they were getting in, I could pass on by and probably go and call the police. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I was so tired, I put on the signal light and I turned up in the yard. So once I was getting out the car to lock the door, I heard these footsteps, and I looked around, there was these 3 guys running behind me with guns drawn out. Okay, it was too late for me to try to run or jump back in the car and bag out. So what I did, I walked toward my porch, so they came on up with guns drawn, and so they said, well, mister, put your hands up. Mm-hmm. Give up your money. I told him I didn't have any money. Yeah. Okay, so he just insisted, well, you got something, give it up, So they just stood their ground. They stayed down on the ground. I was on my porch. So he said, open up your door to your house. I told him, no, I wasn't going to open up my door. I didn't have any money. I hadn't been Christmas shopping. So he could go on down the street and try to find him another victim.
Were you afraid?
Well, I was afraid, but I had to think how I was going to get away from under those guns, though. Mm-hmm. I was really afraid, but the fear, I didn't panic, The only thing I believe what really helped me out, I didn't panic.
Okay, so you told them they'd have to go somewhere and find another victim?
They would have to go and find another victim. So another guy came up out of the bushes. He went in my car. He got my billfold out. He came up on the porch. He said, mister, I already see that I'm going to have to shoot your MF. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I said, well, I'm going to tell you just like I told him, I don't have any money. I haven't been Christmas shopping. He said, who's in the house? I said, no one's in the house. He said, open that door. Mm-hmm. I said, at first I denied. I said, no, I'm not going to open it. But he was just so persistent, that I opened the door. Mm-hmm. And I knew no one was in there. So I said, well, okay. I opened the door up. I had left all the lights on. He said, now get in there. I said, no. I said, you can go, but I'm not going in the house. He said, oh, yes, you are. So he came on up on me, and he tried to push me, and the push was wet from the rain, and I slipped down on one knee. So what I did, I pushed him back, and I pushed him down, so he became angry. And he said, I told you I was going to shoot your ML. And so he didn't shoot me. A little guy what was down the ground, he had one of the guns. He had the gun in my side, but he didn't shoot me right here, Yeah. And I said a quick prayer. I said, Lord, deliver me. I know I'm going to get shot. That's the only way I can get away from it. So he didn't shoot me in the stomach. He lowered the gun. He shot me straight through the knee. So once he shot me, that's all I was waiting on. Mm-hmm. When he shot, I jumped. When I jumped, another guy on the other side hit me in the head with a pistol, and I could feel the knot rising on my head. But once I jumped, I landed far out from them, and it looked like my legs just went to running. And I ran up the street, and I was looking back, and they were hollering, catch that MF, and they were shooting, but they couldn't catch me. Mm-hmm. So I saw them go across the park, to go to their concert. I walked on back down. I called my daughter because they had taken my insurance card and my bill before I told her to meet Mo at Princeton Hospital. So I drove myself to the hospital.
So when you look at that, and when you look at the movement, when you look at the way children used to be, and you look at where we are and all of those things, what do you think the movement did then? How do you think it's helping today? And what do you think we need to do?
Okay, the movement then, a lot of youth were involved. And like I was saying, it was something positive that they could get involved in. But today, the movement is not as active as it was back then. Mm-hmm. Maybe we got so many freedoms now. And our youth now, they didn't experience what we experienced. They didn't have to go through that. Mm-hmm. Everything that they have is just given to them. And they really haven't worked for it, and they don't know how to appreciate it.
So do you think that's the movement then taught a sense of pride, and community, right, and teachers and ministers, right, taught a sense of pride?
Right, a sense of pride, a sense of respect, discipline, respect your elders. Mm-hmm. Right.
And when you look at things today, what is the movement doing today? There's SCLC, there's NAACP, there's the Black Crusade for Children. There are different organizations working to save and to help not just children but adults. But what do you think the movement, the NAACP, the SCLC has a new, NAACP that is, has a new chair. What do you think the movement of these organizations are doing today?
Okay, well, they're doing something positive, but to me today, the movements, everybody's going on their separate ways, When back in the civil rights days, everybody was together, All the movements were trying to join hands, mm-hmm, and be together, mm-hmm, and look like now they are spread it apart, Mm-hmm. And I hear a lot of youth saying, well, the older people need to step down and let the youth handle it. Mm-hmm. And because the youth know the issues that today's youth are faced with, and that the older leaders, they are not in tune with it.
Do you think this is a way for the two to come together?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. If you were in charge, what would you do?
If I were in charge of...
With one of the organizations?
With one of the organizations. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, like you were saying, I would sit down, I have the elder leaders and the youth leaders sit down and discuss, the problems that we're having in our community, mm-hmm, the problems that we're having in our schools, the problems that we're having in our communities, mm-hmm, and with our youth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you do any marchings back during that time, or get on the bus to any of that?
Yes, I did a lot of marching back then. Okay, I even went to jail in '63.
Tell us about that.
The fire hoses and things. Okay, well, we left school again. We leaving school again. Okay. To come down to march. Mm-hmm. Okay, we get down there, and we weren't suspecting, that we were going to be confronted the way we were confronted. It was really a surprise, and then it was frightening. So
you just thought, we're going to cut school, we're going to go down there, we're just going to march.
Right.
And be over, and then we'll come home.
Because that's usually the way it used to go. Mm-hmm. But this particular day, it didn't go that way. Mm-hmm. And that's when, everybody went to jail, right? That's when they had the fire hoses and they had the dogs. Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like? You said you were in the event where they had the hoses on people?
Yes.
And you were hosed?
Well, I was further back in the crowd, but we did get wet, but not that brute force.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And did you go to jail?
Yes.
What was that? What age were you then?
14.
So what did that feel like? A 14-year-old kid, I guess the first thing you think is, my grandmother's going to kill me.
Right. And then I was afraid because going to jail at such a young age, mm-hmm, and then just being incarcerated. I had never been incarcerated before.
Mm-hmm. How was it when you were in jail? What was the treatment like?
Well, it like I said, it was just a fearful moment, Mm-hmm. Like we were being intimidated and things. We were treated like, we weren't even human. And so that treatment, plus not knowing that we was going to come into contact with that, we were going to be confronted with that.
Are there any mementos or any things that you had from during the time of the movements that you were able to keep or that you came across? A newspaper article, something from a meeting, anything like that?
Okay, I had some things, but my house was broken into, and
Okay.
all of my things, you know, they were displaced.
Well, if you could make a difference today, which you've already done to an extent because you were involved, what would you say to the youngsters? I know that you work with youngsters at VACA Center. What do you see as the problem or the concern, the biggest concern with African American youngsters? And what would you say to, what kind of impact, or what would you say to them to get them to be better students and respect themselves more?
Okay, first I would tell them to stop, look, and listen. Stop the killing. Look and see how far we have come. And listen. Because a person that never listens, always talks, and never learns anything.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. What do you think is some of the main concerns with youngsters today, the biggest problem with African American youngsters today?
Okay, well, they say, well, good jobs.
So you think there's a need for more jobs?
Yeah, better paying jobs, right.
What about education? Do you think that youngsters are paying enough attention to education?
Well, I really don't think they're paying enough to get a good education, because a lot of them think, well, even if I get a good education, I might not find a job.
But you have to try somewhere.
But you have to try somewhere, right? And you have to start somewhere, right?
That's true.
And that's a good start.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share before we end? Or any comments you'd like to make?
Well, I'd like to say this. Before my time ends here, I hope that something positive can be shown to the youth of today to make them turn away from all the hideous crimes and misdeeds that they do and perpetrate upon their own. And that they learn that we can live and be one, a people together, and we can progress and help each other.
Okay. Thank you very much for the great interview.
Thank you.
Well,